Good afternoon. This is City Council hearing for City Council Bill 22-0235, Ordinance of Estimates for the fiscal year ending in June 30th, 2023. We will now be hearing from the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs. If you can please, Ms. Rodriguez, introduce yourself and go through your presentation.
Thank you, Councilman, and thank you, Council members, for the opportunity to present. My name is Catalina Rodriguez Lima. I'm the Director of the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs, commonly known as MIMA. Our mission is to promote the community well-being, economic development, and the integration of new Americans in the City of Baltimore. Our responsibilities include advise the mayor, senior staff, agencies on matters related to the foreign-born communities. We also provide technical assistance to city agencies, anything from policy, outreach strategies, messaging, resources, best practices. We also serve as a source of information for limited English proficient residents. We manage the city's language access program, and we do community engagement and outreach with a focus on ethnic civic groups, nonprofit organizations serving immigrants, faith-based institutions, and ethnic media. And finally, we respond to the needs of new Americans based on changes at the federal level. A little bit of information regarding our demographics. According to the latest ACS, we have close to 49,000 foreign-born individuals, which represents 8.1% of the city's population. Approximately 21,000 of those individuals are limited English proficient, which means that they cannot read, write, or speak English. A third of MIMA's budget is funded by the Office of Refugee and Resettlement and the Maryland Office of Refugee and Asylees to provide vocational training and employment for refugees in Baltimore. MIMA subcontracts this funds to the International Rescue Committee to provide resources. In our role as a grant administrator, we monitor and evaluate the program by conducting monthly progress meetings, biannual reporting, and biannual audits. As of last week, this grant is being renewed for federal fiscal year 2023. We anticipate the grant to increase to meet the needs of Afghan evacuees resettled in our region and Ukrainian parolees arriving to the city of Baltimore. The numbers of refugees resettled in our region and in our city has increased over the last year due to the increased admissions by the Biden administration and the crisis in Afghanistan and Ukraine. Since 2021, the IRC has resettled close to 300 refugees from Sudan, Syria, Pakistan, Democratic Republic of Congo, Eritrea, and approximately 500 Afghan evacuees or refugees in the city of Baltimore. The recommended budget also includes a contractual position to implement the city's language access program, which provides language access resources, telephonic interpretation, translation resources, and technical assistance to city agencies to ensure compliance with federal mandates related to Title VI, where agencies, including government, cannot discriminate individuals based on language. During the last year, MIMA has worked with 6 agencies, bringing the total of city agencies to 12 to ensure compliance. Compliance means that they have a designated liaison to work with our office, complete a language access guidance document, and that employees participate in a language access training. Last year, we trained a total of 305 employees and provided 90 translations in 12 languages. Finally, our budget supports MIMA's 3 full-time staff, which collectively provide technical assistance to the administration and city agencies. Over the last year, MIMA has continued to support the city's response to the pandemic. More specifically, MIMA has focused on the following. In partnership with the health department, we established COVAX multilingual call centers to help immigrants and refugees access the vaccines. The call centers are located at Esperanza Center for Spanish speakers and the International Rescue Committee for anyone who doesn't speak English or Spanish. Collectively, these 2 call centers have been able to contact 4,000 new Americans in 18 languages, resulting in 3,000 vaccinations. These call centers will continue to operate until the end of 2022, and we will continue to manage them. As mentioned earlier, we've also trained over 300 employees on language access and translated a total of 90 COVID documents in 12 languages. We increased our in-person outreach to promote vaccines and resources by leveraging FEMA funds to hire 6 community organizers to canvass neighborhoods with low vaccination rates and high immigration populations, resulting in 7,000 in-person interactions. We've continued to serve as a source of information for people who can't speak English by providing over 100 community updates via email, social media, community stakeholder calls, and ethnic media in multiple languages. And then finally, you may have heard me talk about a cash assistance program that we did in 2020. We issued a second round of assistance to support 1,000 immigrant families excluded from benefits to access financial assistance and case management support through the Emergency Relief for Immigrant Families program. We have an Arpa proposal to continue this program over the next 2 years to provide, again, case management and financial assistance to 2,000 immigrants and refugees over the next 2 years. As we emerge from the pandemic, we will be shifting our focus to our former activities, starting with language access. We will be onboarding a third cohort of agencies and releasing additional guidance, such as a standard operating procedures and a toolkit for city agencies. We have applied to ARPA funds to help us expedite our efforts around language access and are currently awaiting a response. We're also going to be retaking our civic engagement activities. This fall, we will be hosting our new American Leadership Institute, which provides a 6-week training for immigrant leaders to learn about civic engagement in the US and in Baltimore. We're also bringing our signature event, the Baltimore Immigration Summit, which is a one-day conference that brings together academia, service providers, and communities working with and for new Americans. Prior to COVID, we had established a funding collaborative in partnership with the Baltimore Civic Fund and local foundations to increase resources in our city. The Baltimore Immigrant Community Fund, established in February of 2020, is the first funding collaborative in the state of Maryland and number 27 in the country. It is part of a national program by grant makers concerned with immigrants, where national foundations would match local funds to support immigrants. In fact, this was the vehicle that allowed us to raise $2.5 million to provide cash assistance to immigrant families during the pandemic. More recently, as needs have evolved, we've received national funding from Open Society Foundation and grant makers concerned with immigrants and local foundations to provide immigration legal services to Afghan evacuees and unaccompanied minors at Benjamin Franklin. This year, we would like to create a framework that addresses long-term needs, such as immigration legal services, to continue to support efforts like Safe City Baltimore, which is a legal fund to increase immigration legal services for people who have been arrested by ICE and for those who have not been arrested by ICE. Earlier this year, we also received a temporary grant from the CDC to strengthen our communication and engagement roles. We have been able to hire a full-time staff who's working to increase our social media and ethnic media presence, along with our engagement with our AAPI, Asian American Pacific Islander communities in Baltimore. And finally, as I mentioned earlier, we have an Arpa proposal to provide case management and financial assistance to 2,000 families through 2024. The program will establish a cadre of 12 benefit navigators located in 5 nonprofit organizations: the International Rescue Committee, Immigrant Outreach Service Center, Southeast CDC, CASA, and Esperanza Center. I want to close by saying that, and I've said this before, that our work is based on local needs and national best practices and frameworks. In 2021, our city was ranked number 5 in the country in immigrant integration efforts by the American Immigration Council and the New Americans Economy. The index measures and compares immigrant integration across the 100 largest cities in the United States by assessing local policies such as language access, immigration legal services, government infrastructures dedicated to supporting immigrants, and more. This is not the first time that we have ranked in the top number 5. And the reason I want to share this with you is so that you know that we're not working in a vacuum. We're listening to people, and we're basing it on national best practices. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Councilwoman Ramos, do you have any questions by any chance? You do? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I do have questions. Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Catalina. You've done an amazing job, really starting from scratch an agency and then obviously having to ramp up significantly during the pandemic to do the work that needed to be done to translate all of the documents into the 5 languages so that everybody got a chance to get vaccinated, get tested, so I really, really appreciate it. And of course, you worked with the health department on that as well. So repeat again, you have three people in your staff, but you're ramping up with the help of ARPA, but do you have other enhancements?
Yes, so we have 3 full-time positions, including my own position. We have a contractual position that is responsible for implementing language access. We're proposing 2 additional positions for language access, specifically through ARPA, to help us expedite our efforts. And then through the case management program, we are going to be partnering with nonprofit organizations, so they will be responsible for doing the intake of families on the ground. However, we are bringing Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services, which is a national technical assistance provider, to help us standardize case management across the board and to use their case management software, because as government, we do not want to have information about immigrants because we're subjected to the Public Information Act.
Right.
With that project, our office will have a project manager and a helpline to help people navigate the different organizations.
But that's not dependent on ARPA, is it?
The language access program is proposing 2 additional positions, which will be available through 2024. And the case management program also proposes 2 additional positions, which would be available through 2024.
But you're working with the refugee services and having them help with the case management. That is also dependent on your ARPA ask?
That's also depending on the Arpa proposal.
Well, you've already raised a lot of money for some of these other programs. You haven't heard anything from ARPA yet.
I have not.
Right. But it wasn't you just haven't heard anything yet.
I just haven't heard anything, yes.
Right, exactly. And what was the amount?
For the case management, it was close to $5 million. It incorporates the cadre of benefit navigators. It also incorporates a team of legal service providers, something that we learned through our Emergency Relief for Immigrant Families program was that families were hesitant to apply to public benefits. So we're bringing an immigration attorney and a paralegal to walk clients through their rights and basically convince them that it's okay to apply to public benefits if they have a U.S. citizen child. The program is also bringing technical assistance providers such as Lutheran Immigration Refugee Services and Maryland Hunger Solutions to help us with processes such as SNAP.
That's super critical. So that's the $5 million for the case management, and what's the other one?
Language access, I believe, is at $800,000, and that's to fund a language access consultant and a language access outreach coordinator, which ideally could help us get information about services and resources created as a result of ARPA, not just from MEMA, but from any agency that is using ARPA dollars.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I know we got all those descriptions. But thanks for that heads up as well. We're seeing new Americans arrive all the time. Obviously, not everybody is labeled as a refugee or an asylee, which that has its own issues that are the world, UN and everybody else. But so we have so many that aren't labeled refugee or asylee, but they would still be able to get these services, correct?
Correct. The program is focusing on families with mixed status, where a parent may be undocumented and a child may be a U.S. citizen. Through the child, families can have access to SNAP, TANF, SSI, and energy assistance, internet assistance. It is through that child that the family can access additional public benefits. But it's challenging for these parents because they have a language barrier, they're afraid of accessing public benefits through the government, there's still chilling effects from the Trump administration. And let's face it, a lot of these systems are not equipped to serve people who can't speak English and do not know how to navigate these systems. So the benefit navigator will be equipped to guide families through these processes for a period of 8 months.
So that's their case management period, basically.
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay. I have another question, but did you?
Yeah, I did have 2 questions.
Go for it.
Thank you. I did have a question about conflict mediation. Do you all work with, because one of the things that we're experiencing in South Baltimore, there's a growing Hispanic population in South Baltimore, but there are cultural barriers between communities that are already existing there and the Hispanic population. Do you all work with any conflict mediation organizations, or what strategies do you all execute from MEMA that can support these organizations as well?
Yeah, thank you, Councilwoman. So we treat that on a case-by-case basis. We had a few years ago, we had some incidents in Lakeland, for example, where we approach our partners at CASA to help with some of the conflict mediation, the STEAM Center. We had similar issues in Northwest as well. We rely heavily on the nonprofit organizations, especially those like CASA, to do grassroots outreach to bring communities out and to serve as the bridge. And oftentimes what we would do is identify funding for those programs to happen. We don't have a standard program that we manage on an annual basis. We treat it on a case-by-case basis. Part of the training that we have for the New American Leadership Institute includes racial bias, conflict mediation, leadership, where we do try to educate our immigrants about moving into the U.S. and moving into a city like Baltimore and teaching them about the history of Baltimore as well.
No, I appreciate that. I would encourage you to, as we kind of expand the role of this office, hopefully with some sort of allocation to the new program manager that you're discussing related to the ARPA dollars, that may be an opportunity to just add a performance metric related to conflict mediation and cultural competence, because as we're seeing more and more immigrant families, not just Hispanic families, but we have French-speaking families, we are a sanctuary city, and I want to make sure that we are kind of leading from a city perspective in that effort of making sure that everyone is on an equal playing field and everyone has that cultural competence.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for elevating that. I think the Baltimore Immigrant Community Fund will also be a good opportunity to bring philanthropy on supporting causes like that on an annual basis.
Nice. My second question has to do with the program manager. I assume that this will be a multilingual kind of approach, so not just the Hispanic population, but also French-speaking and other growing immigrant populations in the city.
The reason why we're partnering with these 5 organizations is because they're strategically located throughout the city.
Okay.
Immigrant Outreach Services is located in Northwest and mainly serves African foreign-born immigrants. The International Rescue Committee, located in Central Baltimore, serves immigrants, refugees, asylees, but they're also going to be outreaching to AAPI communities.
Wonderful.
Southeast CDC is going to be focused in Southeast Baltimore. CASA is going to focus in Northwest and South Baltimore, and the Esperanza Center is going to have a citywide role.
Okay, perfect. And so Esperanza Center will be servicing as like a coordinator between the two? Between the organizations, or just a citywide perspective?
Just a citywide perspective. Okay. We're managing, along with LIRS, the case management across the board, standardizing that process and collecting that data as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, and I'll save my other questions for.
I have another. Thank you. We asked the question of BSIT the other day about let me just back up and say one of the issues that we've been seeing is that people, in addition to not trusting, government for lots of reasons, they're obviously not trusting 311 or don't know about it. And anyone who lives in our city should be comfortable dialing 311 and getting the services. So we learned that BSIT is actually moving forward on working on a Spanish version of the app, which I think is phenomenal. So I hope that they reach out to you and you've reached out to them about that. What are some other efforts that you're doing? And I know Yaslin in my office is working with you on, but just for the sake of the group, to educate folks on 311 and what they should expect and how to, we're all dealing with some challenges with 311, but in general, it's a very good system. So hopefully more people are ending up using it.
Yeah, in the past, we have developed materials for translation and educating people on how to use 311, but also giving them tips on how to improve the experience when working with a telephonic interpreter, meaning that it's possible that it's not just going to be them and the operator, but the interpreter has to be there as well. We've also shared that information with ethnic media and translated it in multiple languages. I myself have gone on shows to promote the service. We're happy to hear that they are translating the app, and we look forward to promoting that as well with our communities. I think our role as a source of information for immigrants is critical because our folks do not read the Baltimore Sun or watch WJC 13. So, anything that we can do to get information from city agencies out into the community to non-traditional settings, that's where we see a role as a connector and as a bridge.
That's great. I appreciate it. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
I have one more question. So one of the main issues with regard to wage theft and wage enforcement has been a critical issue that, personally I've been focused on. Can you speak to any collaborations with organizations and or any other city agencies that you're working with to kind of address those issues? One of the things that again, I'm noticing is that, there's such a rich cultural perspective, but also a rich economic perspective within the immigrant community as well that can be leveraged into viable tax dollars for our city. And so can you speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, 1 in 7 immigrants is a business owner,
Yes.
so you're absolutely right. So we work closely with the Office of Civil Rights, and they are one of our core agencies as it relates to language access. They've gone through all of our trainings. They have bilingual staff. They often have presentations in our Facebook page or in the community about their rights and how to report if they are victims of wage theft. CASA is also another organization that the city subcontracts through CDBG funds to provide those resources as well. We remain committed to making sure that immigrants know their rights and how to access those services that perhaps are not located in our office, but that exist within our city agencies.
No, I appreciate that, and I would just encourage, again, an additional collaboration with the previous office that we just heard from, small women and minority-owned businesses. If they have, their own businesses, they should be certified in the city. They should be certified in the state. We should be adding them to we should be adding them to the landscape of the city, and I want to make sure that we are including them as such. So,
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Any other questions, anybody? All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Rodriguez, and we will now move on to the next hearing.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Next up is, what's that? 2 minutes? 3 minutes, okay. Gotcha, okay. We will recess and give Mr. Hamowitz an opportunity to put his presentation on the screen.